Now let's see what goes into using lights effectively in Stingray. Besides showing you how to actually create light objects, we're also going to learn a technique called light baking. Light baking is a technique that allows you to improve the quality of the lighting within your Stingray scene, but also allows you to achieve improved real-time performance of your levels. Simply put, light baking is a process of running a pre-calculation on all the lighting of the objects in your scene. These calculations are saved as special texture maps called light maps and are saved to disk. They are then automatically loaded when it's time to view the new level. So let's create some lights and let's bake them. Now, whether you're bringing lights over from 3ds Max or you're creating them here, once they're in Stingray, they're going to work the same. So let's just go ahead and create some directly within Stingray. I'll go to the Create tab, Lights, and you can see there's only one type of light object to create. All I have to do is click on it and drop it in my scene. I right-click to end the process. I can then move and position it just like I would any light object in the scene, and we can just put it wherever we want. If we look down on the property editor, we can take a look at some of the different light settings, and they're all pretty straightforward. If you're used to working with lights in 3ds Max, this part is going to be super simple. From the drop-down, we can choose which type of light it is. In this case, we're working with an omnidirectional light. We can change it over to a spotlight, a box light, or a directional light. Remember, the difference between a box light and a directional light is essentially the fact that a directional light is parallel light rays that are unconstrained, meaning one directional light can light everything in the scene, kind of like the sun. A box light is parallel light that is constrained, meaning it's only emanating from a box going in one direction. Let's go ahead and change our light to a spotlight. And I'm going to need to reposition it a little bit, so I'll just come up here to rotate, and I'm going to rotate it -90 degrees. I'll then move it up and over, and we'll push it back a little bit and get it right on top of the table. Now I can edit some more of its settings. I can see that it's still pretty dark, so I'm going to want to increase the intensity quite a bit. That's probably a bit too much. We'll dial it back to 20, and I can adjust the fall-off settings, so we'll increase the end angle quite a bit. We'll adjust the start angle fall off to make it a little bit more crisp. We'll leave the end of light fall off there and the start of the fall off there. Now I can tell by the light blooms in my scene that this is still really way too intense. So we're going to go ahead and turn down the intensity even more. One other thing that I want to make sure is going to happen is that we're definitely casting shadows. So I'll go ahead and turn on cast shadows, and now we can see that we've got some nice shadow casting going on. I'm going to slightly reposition this up the wall a little bit. It's still a little too intense for me, but I think that's good. So this is direct light, meaning this is a light source that's actually emitting light in the scene, and you can see that it's dynamic in that whenever I move my light object around, the lighting and the shadows update. Now I want to add some indirect light to the scene. To do that, I'm going to select this floor lamp object in the background, and I'm going to right-click on it and go find it in the asset browser. This is a great little tip that you could use if you have a lot of objects in your scene and your scene is very well organized in all of these different subfolders. This is a great way to quickly navigate to where you need to go when it comes to selecting individual objects. So now that I've navigated to the floor lamp in the asset browser, I want to adjust its material, which is using an emissive property. So I'm going to scroll down and I'm going to set my emissive intensity to 4. And now you can see that our light is appearing as though it's actually creating light, where it's really more of a material property than it actually is a light property. And this is what we call indirect light. We're almost ready to bake the lights within our scene, but we have one more very important step that you'll have to make sure that you do on every object in your scene. And unfortunately, this is not the type of thing that you can do in a mass edit. You have to do it one object at a time. And that is, we have to add a special UV coordinate system just for the light baking texture maps. Fortunately, it's pretty simple. All we have to do is select the unit, right-click, open selected in Unit Editor, and this will give us direct access to the unit itself. We select it, and over on the Properties panel, we scroll all the way down to the bottom until we find the word Generate. Now, you can see that that's kind of cut off, and what it's really saying is generate secondary UVs. So even though we have a UV channel on this object already for our texture map, we need to add a second set of UVs just for the light map. And this will be generated automatically for us. So we'll say OK to that and close it. And then you'll have to say save. So yes, we want to do that. We'll do it one more time to this one. We'll open it up in the unit editor. And I'm doing this separately just to really drive home the fact that you're going to have to do this per object. There really is no easy way to do it if you're doing it automatically. Okay, so I know that I've done it to all of the other objects in the scene already, and those two are all set to go. So I think we're ready to start baking. Let's go ahead and choose Window. And from the Window dropdown, we'll go all the way down to Lighting and choose Bake Light Maps. And then we have a couple of decisions to make. There's two types of bakers in Stingray. One is the Beast Baker, and the other one is the Stingray Baker. The difference between the two is basically this. With Beast, you get more control over the quality of the light maps that are created, so it's a little better quality. It does take a little bit longer, so that's kind of the downside to Beast. But the upside is you get a lot of control and you get a lot of quality. With Stingray, Stingray is a GPU-based light baker, so it's going to use the GPU that you have on your system. The length of render time is really determined by you. Since it's a GPU-based render, you start baking and you watch your scene, and when you're satisfied with it, then you save it. With the Beast Baker, you know that it's definitely done baking when everything is saved. We're going to go ahead and switch back to the Beast Baker. So we're just going to create a standard light map type. We're going to include both direct and indirect lights in our light baking. We're going to choose a quality preset. You have low, medium, and high. Now, this is one of the reasons why I'm using kind of a smaller space to present this information, because light baking can take some time, and I want to make sure that we're able to see the results in a reasonable amount of time. So I'm using a smaller space with fewer lights. Just be aware that if you're baking a large space with lots of lights, the light baking time is going to be increased. For now, we'll just stick with medium. And then the last thing we might need to check is our skylight intensity. Now, there is one more checkbox that I forgot to double check. So before I actually click the bake button, I'm going to go check it. And that's over here on the light. We want to make sure that our light is included in the baked solution. So we need to double check and make sure that's on. Now, you might see the lights appear to turn off in your scene, and that's actually normal until we actually bake. So let's go ahead and click the bake button. And you can see in the lower right-hand corner, it's beginning to render and bake the lights. And there you go. The lights have been baked. Now, watch when I move my light. You can see that nothing is happening in terms of my light moving around. The shadows are staying in place, and the lights on the wall are staying in place. So all of the lighting has now been baked into the scene. I could conceivably just get rid of this light if I wanted to. It's not contributing anything to the scene. I'll select the floor lamp, and if I pull that out of the view, you can see that the emissive properties of the light have also been baked into the scene and are there to stay. So that was a lot of information. We can now create our own lights and bake our own textures directly within Stingray.